Hi everyone, and welcome to another fantastic startup talk here at ANZ Summit. I'm Nikita Lemessurier, a startup advisor at AWS, working closely with some of Australia's most exciting startups. I come from a startup background myself, having launched the Australian arm of a British cybersecurity startup several years ago. But my passion for startups came much earlier, during my time at university, studying digital culture, which is, of course, designed and shaped by startups. At AWS, I get to live this passion every day, managing around 100 startups in the scale-up phase. Typically, these startups have achieved product market fit, have either recently or are just about to raise a Series A or B, and 3 are launching themselves onto the global stage. My job at AWS is to leverage the people and the resources that we have here to help these startups flourish. One customer that is near and dear to my heart and who I could not be more happy to see succeed is Cmode, a Melbourne-based startup truly making an impact on our lives by empowering clinicians around the world to predict stroke. In our talk today, I'll introduce you to Cmode and the company's co-CEO and co-founder Milad, so that we can together unpack the relationship between medical institutions and modern technology, and specifically the complexities of building an AI startup for a hospital context. Unsurprisingly, given the importance of data privacy in healthcare, building AI for hospitals is fraught with challenges. Top of the list is regulatory approval, but then there's hiring the right team with the right skills and building the right architecture to enable scale and security, and many other things besides. Milad will take you through the ins and the outs of building a powerful AI medtech software and discuss the challenge of getting AI into hospitals and who this impacts. But before I hand over to Milad, let me introduce him to you. Milad is a mechanical engineer with a PhD in biomedical fluid dynamics and named on Forbes 30 Under 30 alongside his wife and business partner, Sadaf Monogemi. Together, they are co-CEOs and co-founders of Cmode. Milad and Sadaf met as students in Iran and moved to Singapore in 2012 to undertake their PhD research projects. During their research, Dr. Milad and Dr. Sadaf discovered that they could make an impact in the healthcare industry with their combined skill sets. Milad was researching fluid dynamics as an application to solve medical problems, and Sadaf was applying AI/ML to medical imaging. At this time, they learnt through discussions with clinicians that the current methods of predicting and preventing stroke with medical imaging weren't particularly effective. It is for this reason that the two started Cmode in 2017. And Cmode's mission? A world without strokes. And it's no small problem to tackle. Nearly 500,000 Australians are living with disability caused by stroke. Cmode uses AI-based medical software built on AWS to improve the analysis of medical images such as ultrasounds, CT or MRI scans. Cmode's software streamlines the image analysis workflow and ultimately predicts critical risk factors of stroke. Aside from Australia, Cmode's AI is regulatory approved within Europe, the US and Singapore, and the startup is working with hospitals around the world. To accelerate this growth, Cmode recently raised a Series A of $7 million USD, with investment from organizations like Blackbird and Mass Mutual Ventures. But please don't let me give away the whole story. Now I'd like to introduce you to Milad to walk us through Cmode's journey.
Thank you so much, Nikita, for having me. I think a great place to start is to talk about why do clinicians care about AI. And I want to start with a sentiment that we keep hearing from our users, which is that they spend more time on the report than the scan itself. But unfortunately, even the best reports don't have all the risk factors that we know that can help these clinicians. Two of the very important ones for stroke are plaque composition and blood flow analysis. And that means that stroke continues to have a high recurrence rate, with each recurrent stroke and having an even higher chance of death or disability for the patient. So with that said, I want to talk about a few of the ingredients that go into building an AI-powered medical software. And I want to start with the team. There are a lot of general information and advice about qualities of strong early-stage startups, but two specific things that I want to mention about medtech teams are one, product trios and building great product teams. Don't just hire machine learning engineers. That's a common misconception when people start building AI software. It's about building a great product team and product trios with product management, design, and software engineering that collaborate together. It's a mistake that we made early on, and people keep doing that as well, which is, we underestimated the power that people with no prior medical knowledge can bring to these type of teams and how quickly they can ramp up and add value. The other thing I want to mention about teams in medical technology startups are clinical collaborators. They are so critical, whether they're collaborators, advisors, or part-time clinicians that you work with. Just find a small group of clinicians that you're excited to work with. They are not excited to jump on any idea, but they want to innovate rather than just going through their day-to-day job. Work with them very closely on building your product and making sure that you're solving the right problem and designing the right solutions. And you can also leverage their network to get in front of your customers. Another point that's really important about building AI-powered medical software is setting up the right infrastructure. And that all starts with learning about your customer's IT stack from the get-go and how your product would interact with it. A word of caution though, healthcare systems can be very old and legacy systems, so you need to be prepared for that. For us, this integration means receiving images in a specific medical format from hospitals and then sending reports back to multiple systems within that clinical environment. Make sure that your product team understands these requirements very well and takes these integration touchpoints into account when building your product at the start. These systems are hard to retrofit. For us, again, at Cmode, this meant the ability to be able to receive and respond to high loads of images coming from customers at an instance, looking at hundreds of images that need to be analyzed and reported within seconds, while making sure that we keep our cloud hosting costs down and manageable. Obviously, when you're building an AI-powered medical software, it's really important to build with security at the front of mind. Usually, security and patient privacy surfaces as an objection or checkpoint during the process of adoption of your product in a hospital. Again, make sure that you and your team understand your customers' IT requirements very well from the start. You can also build a good relationship with them and receive their checkpoints around patient security and privacy. What does this mean for them in terms of storing patient data? What can you store and where? So if you understand those questions and get prepared for that, you're going to have an easier time getting product adoption. Again, ask them to give you their security checklists and document all of the answers that you have, so that when you give it to a new customer, you're giving them peace of mind that you've thought about the things they would care about and you've seen it before. And finally, an important ingredient of building an AI-powered medical software is having the right regulatory frameworks in place. Do some reading on regulatory requirements for software as a medical device in your target markets. For example, FDA in the US has generally very good public guidelines and documents on their website. A great resource that we found was actually just a summary of FDA approvals of similar products in the market. It's public and it's free, and it's great to just go to the source rather than rely on secondhand advice. Another opportunity that you have to make sure that you're building with the right regulatory documents in place is to actually talk to the regulatory bodies. It was very easy and quick for us to set meetings with Singapore's Health Sciences Authority before we actually had all of our regulatory documents ready for approval. And granted, some regulatory bodies may not be as fast or friendly as them in organizing a meeting and answering your questions, but many of them are. And they have some form of this pre-submission Q&A session as an offering. Finally, a point about regulatory approvals that also touches on teams is about working with the right regulatory consultants. It's worth noting that a lot of regulatory consultants have only hardware experience. So the ones with software experience are a little bit rare to find. Also, be conscious that regulatory consultants give you general guidance and advice on what documents you should have or what standards you should comply with. But be ready that it's you and your team that needs to write that documentation. So get someone fast and efficient who is willing to roll their sleeves and get the job done. Moving on from the ingredients that go into building AI medical software, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we've seen and heard in the industry about companies building these type of products. And the first one I want to highlight is access to clinicians. Clinicians are naturally time poor and busy people. And besides that, you need somebody in the right space in that spectrum of innovation and maintaining the status quo. You want somebody that doesn't just care about doing their day-to-day clinical work, but also doesn't jump on any idea. Besides access to clinicians and working with the right person, you also need access to clinical data to build and validate your product. And for that, again, access to clinicians is really important. But this time around, clinicians were not greedy to monetize the data that they're custodians of, but instead, they want to build products that help patients. Another challenge of getting AI into hospitals is obviously regulatory approvals. They're there for a great reason, they're necessary, but they can take time. Especially, we found that CE marking in Europe was a very costly and time-consuming process because we were dealing with third-party notified bodies rather than governments themselves. Also, a point that I think is obvious about regulatory approvals but needs to be said is that having one doesn't mean that you will get customers. It means that you can get customers. So set your expectations right. And finally, I think the biggest challenge of getting AI into hospitals, it's about product adoption and distribution. Start with the clinician, that's your champion. You know, they won't get fired because they didn't introduce a new technology into their department. They have a day-to-day job, which is looking after their patients or managing a department, and that can be very demanding. So you need to constantly work with them, keep them excited about the solution you're building, remind them of the impact that the problem is having and how your solution is addressing it. Also, many hospitals don't have established frameworks to trial or adopt or buy new technology, especially when it comes to AI software. We're usually the first or the second AI product that hospitals that we talk to have considered. So that means that even when clinicians love your product, you have to be ready for a long process of chipping away at documents that are sent to you by various departments before you can even start a trial. So try to make this easy for your customer and get a commitment from them early on before running a trial. And be careful about free trials that require resources from your team. And the last challenge is a scale, and that's an exciting one that we're getting there at Cmode. The main one that we're seeing now is actually product deployments in multiple regions, taking into account different requirements around handling patient data. Also, finally, with the scale, it's worth noting that scale in the medical market won't be quite as fast as a non-medical app that can take the world by storm. Change doesn't happen as fast, which can finally work in your favor after you've achieved a reasonable scale, because you and your product can get more inertia and more momentum in the hospitals. But all of those challenges are worth going through when you look at the impact that you and your product can make in the hospitals. For us, it's super exciting to see that our algorithms for plaque analysis and stroke prediction already are hitting high accuracies. And that's given us a chance to change decade-old clinical processes. And with our first product, we're already seeing significant time saving for clinicians that's allowing them to increase quality of care for their patients. So with that, thank you so much again for having me, Nikita, and back to you.
Thank you so much for sharing Cmode's story, Milad. What inspires me the most about Cmode is the innovative approach that you and Sadaf have taken to solving a universal problem, all the time looking with impact in mind. This is just one of the amazing startup stories I hope that I'll have the privilege to share with you during my time at AWS. If you are a startup looking to make your mark on the world, we would love to be able to help you too. We have a myriad of resources from training to credits to architecture frameworks, all ready and here to help you get started. And you can find these on the Activate portal on AWS and just sign up. Activate is of course only one way to get involved, but to hear stories like Cmode's, head on over to the Startup Loft, our startup community. We'd also love to learn more about your journey and the challenges and the milestones in front of you, and you can share this through the Loft. And finally, we know one of the big challenges at the moment is talent, and training is a huge part of that. You can see a couple of links up on the screen, and please use these resources to get your team certified and to upskill. As we heard from Milad, engaging the right people with the right skill set is a critical factor in success. Thank you so much for your time that you've taken here today to learn about Cmode and how they're using AI on AWS to make a difference in the world. If you'd like to learn more from myself or Milad, please reach out to us. We really look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everyone.